So where I live, I lose power probably about once every 3 months or so. And when I first started out with my first and second fish tank, actually my first fish tank ended with a power outage and in the middle of winter, and everything froze and died, unfortunately. And at the time, I didn't have a generator or anything else. And so as I started progressing and getting more and more tanks, I realized that it wasn't sustainable to continue to have tanks without some sort of battery backup. I did end up buying a generator, but then I learned also through bad experiences that power can go out in the middle of the night. There's a lot that can happen. One time it went out while I was gone. I was out of town, and luckily it came back within about 4 or 5 hours, so everything was okay. But that's not always a guarantee. And so I started researching different ways to do a battery backup system. Luckily, every single tank that I have has an air stone in it that runs off of one main central pump. So in order to keep everything alive, really all I needed to do was to just power that one pump. I looked into different battery backup systems, and I found that they range anywhere from 200 to the sky's the limit of $800, over $1,000, things like that. But what I noticed, I looked up the actual specifications of those systems, and they didn't always provide enough power for what would make me feel comfortable. I had some equipment lying around and so I decided that I would just build a battery backup system, which I'll show you here in a second. What I used was an inverter, which I had that I could use on my car. At the time, I didn't have a plug in my car. I do now, but so I had this inverter lying around that I could use, and then I used a marine grade battery, which is really important. You don't want to use a car battery inside the house or anything that gives off or could give off any fumes. You need a sealed battery, and what I used was a marine grade battery that I bought off of Amazon. And I got an automatic transfer switch that everything plugs into, and when the power goes off, it automatically kicks over to the inverter. And then I also have a trickle charger that's hooked up to the battery to keep it charged, because the inverter actually uses a little bit of electricity. But just to give you an idea, this isn't necessarily cost savings, because an inverter will run you anywhere from $70 to $100. The automatic transfer switch will run you about another $70. The battery is probably about another $70. And then the charger is probably about $25, or depending on what kind of trickle charger that you get. Now, looking back, if I were to do this again, I would buy an inverter with a built-in transfer switch so that I don't have to have an external one. But like I said, I had an inverter lying around, and so I just decided to use that. But so when you add all that up, you could probably buy a battery backup system. However, if you do the math, so the battery that I have everything running on is a 33 amp hour battery. A lot of the battery backups that I found, they could run, I did all the math, I won't break it all down for you, but for a very expensive $1,000 battery backup system, it could run my whole, my pump, which draws about half an amp, for about, most of the ones I found at that price range could maybe do it for about 12 hours, maybe 14 or 15, depending on the circumstances. And there are some that have some cool features where they'll kind of pulse rather than keep it running the whole time to kind of stretch that out. But ultimately not that long, especially if I was out of town or something like that. But my battery is a 33 amp hour battery, so at half an amp, I can run the air pump for 66 hours. So to me, that was pretty significant. Now that's depleting the battery 100%, which you don't always want to do. But that's the other part about this, is that this system is completely interchangeable. So if my inverter stops working, I can go buy another inverter. If my battery goes bad, I can go buy another battery. I mean, it's basically an infinite system that I only have to replace little bits and pieces of it over time if I want to. So let me switch, and I'll I'll show you what it actually looks like.
I'll show you the different parts of this. I know it looks kind of like a confusing mess, but I'll go over all of it with you. And I'm sorry, I'm in the top of a closet, so if I'm trying to hold my camera up, so I hope it's not too shaky. But over here on the right is the battery, and so I mean, these are called different things, marine grade, but there's also different kinds of marine grade that will produce fumes. Deep cell, deep cycle, I've seen it listed as that. You know, what's important is that it says, like this one you can see on it, it says non-spillable sealed lead acid battery. So it's sealed. It doesn't, you can't tip it over and dump out all the acid. And that's what's important. I'll put a link to these things in the description, either what I bought or something similar, so that you can find it. But that's really important that you have a battery that's sealed, so it doesn't create any fumes, which can be dangerous. This is a trickle charger. You probably don't need something this complicated. I like the fact that it has the screen on it that I can just visually look at and see what it's doing. I actually just used this charger for something else, which is why it's showing it's not 100% charged, because I had the whole thing unplugged, and the inverter right below it does use a little bit of electricity that draws off the battery when it's using the wall power. But you probably don't even need something this complicated. A simple trickle charger will work, as long as it has something that shows you that it's charging and that the battery is full, so that you know that it's functioning, because otherwise the battery will die if something's not plugged in right, and you won't have any indicator until after the power goes out and your fish are all dead. Right below that is an inverter, which, like I said, you can get these with built-in transfer switch, and then this right here is my transfer switch that I bought. That's an external transfer switch, so you can do one or the other. So the way this works is the power comes from the wall, which plugs in right here, which goes to the transfer switch. The transfer switch has two plugs coming out of it. One of them is plugged into this power strip right here, and the other one is plugged into the inverter. When the power is cut from the wall, pull this off here. It's hard to do with one hand. There you go. See that? When the power comes out from the wall, it automatically switches over to the battery through the inverter. So yeah, one plug goes into the transfer switch, two plugs come out. One of those is plugged into the power switch, one is plugged into the inverter, and then when it comes out, when it loses wall power like that, then it automatically switches over to running on the battery. And like I said, this is a 33 amp hour battery, which means it's going to run for quite some time. This whole thing is powering my linear piston air pump, which uses about a half an amp. So anyway, that's the breakdown of it. Like I said, I'll give you some links to some of this stuff if you're interested in building something similar. Not the cheapest. I mean, you could maybe save a little bit of money getting something cheaper, but definitely for what it does and for how long it can run, absolutely worth it. And in my book, my only option, considering my situation. So you just kind of have to weigh those pros and cons for yourself of what you're looking for and how long you need it to run. And for me, this is peace of mind. I can sleep at night knowing the power goes out in the middle of the night, I'm good. If I go out of town, I'm good. And I've got time to figure out what to do if the power does go out. So that's my battery backup system. Thanks a lot for watching.